Welcome to the My Money and Me video series, part of the Securing My Financial Future initiative. In this video, titled My Expenses, Where Does It All Go?, you'll use the expense tracker worksheet over a 2-month period to track your spending on everything from housing and utilities, to installment loans, to food, clothing, and entertainment, to unplanned expenses and those expenses you incur on a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis, like property taxes and insurance premiums. Tracking your expenses takes only about 45 minutes a month and will give you a wide-eyed view into how and where you spend your money and the types of ongoing expenses you have. So what is an expense? Here's a simple definition: what you spend. While expenses come in all shapes and sizes, in simple household terms, there are basically 4 types of expenses: fixed, variable, discretionary, and extraordinary.
Why do I need to know this? An expense is an expense, and spending is spending. There's not much more to it, is there?
Well, there's a lot more to it than you think. Most of our spending behavior is influenced by our emotions and how we rationalize our want-to spending and certain must-have ongoing expenses. Let's start by looking at the 4 types of expenses. Fixed expenses are typically have-to expenses. They include necessities like your mortgage or rent payment, utilities, loans and lease payments, and other fixed monthly or periodic expenses. Variable expenses can be have-to or want-to expenses. These generally include things like gas, car maintenance, certain utilities, groceries, clothing, school supplies, and personal care. Discretionary expenses are want-to expenses. These generally include things like specialty groceries and coffee shops, dining out, fashion wear, movies, theaters, concerts, and club memberships. Now there's one other type of discretionary spending. It's called fixed discretionary. Those discretionary items we're fixed on having. Be careful with this one. We're all good at rationalizing our wants into necessities. The last type of expense is referred to as an extraordinary expense. The unplanned expense, like a major car repair or a medical emergency. Now let's take a look at spending. Excluding charitable donations and gifting, there are basically 4 things you can do with money. Spending is arguably the easiest and most enjoyable thing you can do with your money. You can spend it on everyday items like clothes, dining out, on household staples, groceries and gas, and on larger, not-so-everyday items like kitchen appliances, cars, and houses. The second thing you can do with your money is use it to pay down debt, like credit cards, car loans, student loans, and mortgages. The third thing you can do with your money is save it. The dollars you accumulate over time are referred to as your savings, which can be used for planned and unplanned expenses. The fourth thing you can do with your money is invest it.
So, what's the difference between saving and investing?
To save is generally defined as the avoidance of spending, consumption, or wasting of money. To avoid market risks, savings that are earmarked for planned expenses typically go into bank or credit union accounts or into money market mutual funds. Investing is the deliberate assumption of market risk. The objective of investing is to realize potentially higher returns than from savings when measured over a multiple-year period. But you can't invest if you haven't saved. Now let's go over how to use the worksheet. Track your expenses as is for 2 months. This means no fudging, leaving out expenses, or modifying your normal spending pattern. Use a notepad, spreadsheet program, or your smartphone to keep a daily record of your spending. And while this might be a little inconvenient to do at first, it's the only way to capture the information you need for video number 5 titled My Financial Goals and Spending Plan. Some expenses aren't paid monthly. These are referred to as periodic expenses. For example, property taxes and insurance premiums are periodic expenses because they are usually paid quarterly, semi-annually, or annually.
So how can I plan ahead for my periodic expenses so I am not scrambling to pay them when they come due?
Itemize your periodic expenses and then set aside money each month to cover the payments when they come due. To calculate how much you need to set aside each month to cover your periodic expenses, take the amount of the periodic expense and divide it by 12. For example, a $1,000 annual insurance premium divided by 12 months equals an $83.33 monthly set-aside. At the end of the month, transfer the amounts onto your expense tracker worksheet. Next, in the expense summary section, total up the monthly expenses and set-asides for month 1 and month 2. Write out your observations about your spending pattern in the notes section. The notes you take on your spending over the 2-month period provides good detective work on what's going on between you and your money. In video number 5, you'll use your observations to set your money-related goals and a spending plan for meeting them. This concludes part 2. So what do you know?
I know that my expenses generally fall into 4 categories: fixed, variable, discretionary, and extraordinary.
I know that some of my expenses are have-to necessities and that others are simply want-to expenses.
I know that to invest money for my future, I need to be saving now. Knowing where my money goes by tracking my expenses is the second step in helping my money and me stay together, work together, and hopefully grow together.
To become more informed and empowered, stay connected, stay engaged. Watch the other videos in the My Money and Me series. You can find those and much more on the Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services website at www.michigan.gov/diffs. That's DIFS. Or call 877-999-6442.